Yeah, recording. Okay. Oh, let me open that back up. Okay. So, quickly, we're going to go over something I thought was pretty cool, which is the history, or my history, of how modeling came to be a thing. Um, so, for 3D modeling, it's based around. We're going to talk about modeling origins, first cases of modeling being used, and modeling today. First cases of modeling being used for like films, TV, games, stuff like that, rather than 2D graphics or 2D animation and all that fun stuff. So the origins of modeling to me are these things. You have smithing, which is basically building weapons, architecture, craftsmanship, carpentry, sculpting, wardrobe. All of those things are basically modeling in, not in real life, in real life, while we do it in a 3D space. So all of what we do in a 3D space can be taught in real life. So if you want a better understanding of how to do certain things and create certain things, I highly recommend taking either an actual sculpting class or a carpentry class if you want to do more wood stuff, because you'll learn how these things are put together, and that's a very important part of how modeling is done. Because if you don't know how something is put together, it's very hard to model it. You can find images, which are very helpful, and I use a lot of reference when I model things. If I'm modeling something from that's from imagination, I try and find as much reference as possible. Actually, this will probably take like an hour, maybe hour and a half. I'm just going to go over basics and blocking and shapes for modeling and my concept behind it. Okay, so that's the roots for me. First possible case of modeling in art. The first plays were performed in the theater of blah, blah, blah in the 15th century, or 5th century. So to me, that's like basically where modeling came from, or models came from, because they're basically just props and set designs for movies and films that are made in a three-dimensional space rather than a real one like they previously were. That's why you see all the sets for older films are made there, or TV shows like iZombie is all done indoors, but their sets are made to look like they have windows and all that stuff. So we're pretty much faking it just like they do. And the first case of theater is basically my concept of the first case of when a prop was used, because theater was the start of props. And then the first case of props, like the actual theatrical property, was in 1841. Or the first words to use props, which is like what we use now, and prop 1911. Basically, the companies during the Renaissance time would pool their income to make company props and work together, and now that's where we got the terms for films, games, and all that fun stuff. First case of props in 3D, I think claymation is a really good example of prop making, because it's sculpting simplified down depending on what you're watching. Like, I would say Leica is a really well done prop department, and all their stuff is handmade. I think it's 3D first, and then they print it, and they print out separate mouthpieces and all that, but it's still pretty cool. So this is the first ever claymation film, Long Live the Bull, from 1926. So this is, to me, the first actual case of modeling for films, because it's more of what we do. And then, what is greeble? So greebling is basically you take a whole bunch of pieces from these kits, as you can see in the bottom right corner, and you mash them together to make something look interesting. The Millennium Falcon, anything from the Star Wars movies, pretty much, the original Star Wars movies, is used greeble, and it's just, plastic model kits. Nowadays, it's all modeled greeble. The class I took over the semester, our teacher showed us, he has all the greeble pieces made for the Millennium Falcon, because when he was remaking it for the movies, he made it exactly how it was in the originals, using the same greeble pieces. So these pieces, actually down here in the corner, he had us model this one and a couple other of these. This one, that one, this one, yeah, that one. Like some, oh, this one for sure. These are just pieces from like a tank kit or plane kit, and that's basically what greebling is, and that's modeling nowadays is for films, more or less. It's basically taking a flat surface and making it more interesting, adding layers of materials and stuff. If you guys have any questions while I'm doing this, please ask. I have the chat and everything open so I can hear you and read. First case of greebling, to many's disbelief, was actually not Star Wars. For film, it was 2001 A Space Odyssey, which is a really good old film if you guys haven't seen it before. It's the one with the AI lady who's creepy. And back then it wasn't called Greeble, it was called Widgets. Many of you may know that Star Wars was heavily influenced by Space Odyssey, since the opening scenes are literally the same shot for shot. If you look it up, Space Odyssey is shot for shot the same as Star Wars, so you know Star Wars basically ripped off Space Odyssey, but that's how movies work. But actual greebling for TV shows was originally done in Star Trek. For the first series, it was used for set design, props, and interiors. So it was the first movie it was done was Space Odyssey, and the first like actual case of it used in multimedia would probably be Star Trek, the original series. First ever digital 3D model was done by Ed Catmull and his colleague Fred Park. So the co-founder of Pixar, Ed Catmull, he created a 3D modeled animated hand in 1972. I'm not going to explain the process because it sounds awful, and I wish that, or I'm so glad we don't have to do stuff like that because it sounded painful. And then the first case of 3D model in a movie was Future World in 1976, where they modeled hand, and they used the hand and modeled a face for the film for their turnaround. Is that Haruka? Oh, that was Jinju. I saw the hair and I was like, oh, hi Jinju. Okay, we're just talking about history. This will all be recorded, so anything you missed, you can go back and watch. So the first feature film using 3D models was Future World. They're super simple models. Like, look at this hand. It looks painful. Like, if you tried to model something like this nowadays, someone would probably smack you just because of how terrible it looks. But back then, that was like the greatest thing ever made of all time. The first available 3D program was something called Sculpt 3D, released in 1987. For the Amiga computer, and it looks hilarious nowadays. Like, so this is something someone made, and if you look it up online, it's an animated little thing. It's pretty funny. It's just a dude juggling like giant glass balls. So yeah. Then who else just got here? Someone else. Oh, Fiona just got here. Okay. So that's the first case of a 3D graphics program. Basically the predecessor to Maya in a way, but it wasn't actually the old version of Maya. Oops. There we go. The first 3D animated game was Virtua Racing, made in 1992, and Virtua Fighter, created by Yu Suzuki from Japan. Fun fact that the original PlayStation was originally planned to be a 2D video game focused hardware, but because of Virtua Fighter and Virtua Racing, it became a 3D focused platform. So, in all honesty, these two games basically have decided how, or set a path for how gaming is now, because most of our games are 3D. And I think without these games, I don't know when 3D would have been like a huge thing for gaming, because back then it was pretty difficult and costly compared to 2D. So yeah. And the first fully animated feature film, as most of you know, is Toy Story, released in 1995, and it still holds up. I mean, the models don't really. You can see some pretty rough modeling done, but for back then, these are pretty damn incredible. So I would say this is a pretty dope film. And that's it. That's my fun history facts about modeling and what I think modeling comes from. Does anyone have any questions, or should I go into what we're doing for this class and how to model or how to download ZBrush and stuff? Hi, Willow. Bye, Willow. No questions? Okay, I'll do download ZBrush in a second. I gotta go talk about the class for quickly. So, I've decided. Oh, hi, Cooper. There's no Willow. So I've decided for the class, I may switch out this Magnum pistol, just because I think it may be too complex. Just because I'd probably have to go step by step on how to do certain parts of it, just because it's kind of a lot more detailed than I originally thought when I was looking at it. I modeled it myself just to like get a practice of it, and there's certain pieces I say would be difficult. I actually, it's just because it's so curved, but if you guys think you can do it, you can. Otherwise, I have another choice, which is this Glock. It's pretty square, but it has a lot of things I can still show with, and it's got this cool 3D turnaround. So if you have any questions about like what the model looks like, this is probably going to be really good and helpful. So I'll probably just throw this in anyway. If someone wants to try the Magnum, like Jack apparently, we'll see how he does, just because it's kind of difficult, but just the curves, I mean, it's not terrible, it's just a little bit harder than most. But yeah, so that's choice number one. Before I show you guys how to download ZBrush though, auto saves on, I'm going to show you guys how you should set up your scene for blocking in your object. So in modeling, the first thing you should do is set your scale. Set the scale of your scene, set the scale of everything, and stuff like that. Quickly, I'll go over the tools I use and some of the presets, and if you can see my shelf here, it's got a lot of crazy things on here like NWrap, cut sew, rename, blah blah blah, weld, and these are all little tools I use. Oh, that one doesn't work unless I have things selected. I'll select this one. So they're little tools and they show like how to make things. So this is a pipe I basically can make, and then I can rotate, bend, add another one. It's a cool little tool. It's really helpful if you have to add piping to things. And I'll include all of these in my on the drive. I'll let you guys download them. So it should be pretty cool. What I use for hotkeys, I have here. Let me just bring in a model really quick, or a cylinder. I can just bring in a cylinder. So this is a cylinder. I have a hotkey called Alt X. And that turns on and off X-ray, because normally for X-ray you have to go all the way to shading, X-ray to turn it on, and then you have to do the same thing to turn it off. So I just made a hotkey that's Alt X, just turns on and off the shading, and I'll share that with you guys. So this is wireframe. I use this a good portion of the time if I'm trying to find the inside of the model. It basically just makes it the frame, like the strips. Blocked, just fills it in, turn it off, and you can see like the edges of the face or the turning points. Then we have this one you don't really use. This is wireframe and shaded, which is the whole thing. It's going to be useful while we're modeling too. This is textures. I'll show you that when I import an image. This is lights. We won't do that for now, and I'll show you guys the rest of these later. W's move. E's rotate. R is scale. I don't know if Dave teaches this, but you can move the pivot of something by holding D and V, and you can center it on points. You can either center it by, if you hold V, you can snap to vertices, but since this is the only object, I can't really snap it to another vertice since it's the same. If you hold X, it'll snap to the grid, which is really useful because you want to try, what we're going to do is model this piece on the center of the grid because we want it to be a prop for games. and centering it on the grid is the best way to get it to import and export into other programs, just because otherwise it looks weird. So this is the scene I have right now. Does everyone know how to turn this on? This right here? It like tells you the vert count, edge count, and face count of the objects. Yay, nay. I'm gonna guess no. Okay, so thanks, Sienna. You go to display, heads up display, and poly count. So this is how you turn on and off this little thing. And you're going to need this. This is actually super helpful. So if I have, I'm going to go to vertex mode. If I have one vertex on top of the other, and I don't know, if I select both of these, it tells me there's two verts here, but it looks like one. But since I can see that it says two verts here, I know there's two vertices. And it's the same with edges. If you have overlapping edges here, let me actually extrude, and I'm just going to leave it. If I go right click and go to vertex face, I can see this extra line, two of them actually. And this is the vertex. This is showing me that there's extra edges or extra faces. Sometimes faces don't actually have a value and they're not big. This can happen if you extrude too fast and you're not paying attention. The easiest thing to do is just go to object mode, and then I'm going to show you guys a shortcut for this in a second, but just merge, and it'll merge all of the extra vertices in the scene. So now I have only one vertice here instead of the two. But I will probably, oh no, okay, it did merge it down. Sometimes it doesn't, but there was an extra edge here because I moved it over, but it's fine. Guys, if you have any questions, let me know while I'm going, or else I'm just going to continue going through stuff. I will also be sharing my heads up bar right here with you guys, and all of my shortcuts and hotkeys and stuff. So let's see what to quickly go over. So to create shapes into your scene, I do a lot of shortcuts. I use right click a lot. Right click, you have so many options. If you do it over an object, you can change edge, vertex, vertex face, and face mode. These are just different modes you can use to select parts of the object and all that fun stuff. Willow's barking at me from my bed. It also is a way to, if you need to assign a material to something, this is the fastest way. Instead of having to open up the Hypershade editor, just right click. Now it's a blend, which is a shiny object. So it has refraction now and reflection. So what I do is I have my own versions of this little marking menu. These are what they're called. They're called marking menus, this little turnaround when you hold right. Another one is if you hold shift and right click, it gives you the option to create shapes or primitives. So I can make any of these primitives. I just click and it'll make it. And I just drag it over and I got a little thing. It looks like a donut. So shift and right click gets you this one. Control right click. Oop, you have to be over an object. Oh, sorry. If you're in edge mode and you shift right click, is it just right click? No, it is shift right click. You get these tools. These are all the tools from in the taskbar above that show you, like, they work for edge or face mode, stuff like that. So if I switch to edge, because right now it's on face, it'll give me edge tools, edge, bevel edge, all that fun stuff. And if I'm in vertex mode, it'll give me vertex stuff, average vertices, chamfer vertex, stuff like that. So I have my own set hotkeys. I press Control or Alt C and then right click. Oop. Come on. What is happening? Are my hotkeys not set? The fuck? Oh, sorry. Alt C left click. I don't know. I'm talking too fast. But these are the tools I use. They're pretty useful. If anyone doesn't know what the circleize tool is, it's not it's not used very often by most people. I use it if I'm making a round object. So right now I'm using multi-cut just to draw back in this I made. The edge that I deleted. So now it's not a circle. It's like got this flat part. So if I select all these faces, deselect those ones, and go circulize, it'll make it back into a perfect circle. This is super useful if you have like a couple faces on a plane that you want to make into a circle that are like a square or a rectangle. It'll just quickly automatically make them into a circle. So you can extrude or all that fun stuff or add more shapes. Is there any other tools you guys want me to show? So I have Alt-C left click, and these are the tools I use for that. Collapse is basically just what it says. You're merging things together quickly. Bridge you use to fix holes in your geometry. So if I deleted this face, I would just quickly use the bridge tool, and voila. Another one you can do is the append polygon tool. I use this for triangles mainly, but you click both sides, press enter, and it makes that, which is super useful. And then I also have Alt-V. I have this for add divisions, detach, extract. So these two are pretty useful, attach and extract. I never remember which one does which, but they both basically pull pieces off the object. So if I want to select a face, press detach, and then see, detach doesn't fully extract it, so now I have to go to separate, and I have this extra face. If I go straight to extract, it'll just automatically pull it out. So that's the difference. Sometimes you have to do both, sometimes you have to do one. It's kind of weird. But yeah, so now these are separate meshes I can move around by themselves, and I can fill them back in if I want to. These are the Boolean operations. I use Booleans mainly to get the shapes I want, and then I quad draw over it. Does everyone here know what quad draw is? All these shortcuts you're going to have to... Okay, thank you. All these shortcuts you're going to have to set up yourself. I'm going to show you how in a sec, but I will give them all to you so you don't have to like do all the crazy stuff and like figure out how they go. So here, and then these are all tools I use personally. Don't use lights. It's kind of a crazy program. It's the DreamWorks auto lighting system, so it uses up a lot of hard drive space and sometimes can crash Maya. So I recommend just avoiding it. This is UV editor. This we'll use much later, so you don't need to worry about this. This is also for UVs. Auto renamer. This is for when we start naming in the outliner, because we want to keep a pretty organized outliner. I pretty much always leave the outliner open, because if I want to select different things. So I have this face is one item. And you see that this transform thing is here. So to get rid of that, you're going to want to delete history. Most of the time while you're modeling, you're going to want to delete history just because it keeps your model clean and it gets rid of weird transformations. See, so now it got rid of that transform on the right. Renaming we're going to use later. BWeld is for welding. It's like a welding tool. I'll show you guys that when we need it. Nightshade is for it's for blocking in UVs and stuff. So don't worry about that. ELT we're going to use later. It's a pretty fun tool. It's not super practical anymore just because it's a bit outdated, but it still works pretty well. You can, if I click one of these, select edge loop, it selects everything around. The only reason these two aren't selected is because there's no faces here, so the edge loop technically ends where the faces end, or where there's like nothing connected. Flatten and unfold are tools using UVs most of the time. Flatten is it basically creates a flattened version of your model based on the UVs, which is pretty helpful. We won't use it most likely just because, actually we might. I might show you guys how to use that more later on. Unfold. Ooh, I need to select an object. Oh, or not. What happened? Oh, okay. So we're gonna quickly unfold this object. Yeah. So it doesn't work on this one because it's not cut correctly. That's what unfold's a bit different, so I don't recommend using it. Cam set is just your camera settings. I usually have one camera in perspective and one in the like angle I want to use. If you hold spacebar and left click, you get these other top view, left view, back view. I usually use top or or left, and all these are really helpful for when you're blocking in shapes. What else? This is center pivot. You're going to need this because if you hold D and V, you can move the pivot point of your object. Come on. There we go. So I'm just snapping it to the vertices. And this basically means I could scale from that point, or move it from this point, or rotate it from here. And that's going to be super useful. But if you want to center it back to the center of the object, just press center pivot and it moves it back to the center. Import export, you guys probably won't use. Auto crease is a really cool tool. It automatically creates hard and soft edges for your object. So this part, all of these edges around are hard edges now. So all the orange is hard and all the blue is soft. The reason you don't want a cylinder with hard edges here, because I can harden them. Oh, did I take that out? I thought I left that in. Where did I put it? Oh, maybe I took it out. Okay, but I used to have it in my little thing. But if you harden this edge, it's going to look kind of weird. Here, let me turn this off. See? So now it's no longer a cylinder, really. It's got like this weird crease in the middle. So these are what the edges look like when you have them soft. And this is what it looks like when you have it hard. This is where I put them. So this softens all the edges. This hardens all the edges. Oh no, other way around. This one's soft, this one's hardened. What does this do? Oh, this one creates UV seams at all the hard edges, which is going to be really important. I'll talk more about that later. This is Speed Workflow. This tool I just downloaded. I think you guys are going to like it when I show you guys how to use it. It's basically, I can click my object. Okay. And, okay, cool. We're going to do a, difference. Which one is it? Where is it? Clean mesh. There we go. Correct topology, weighted norms. So all these tools are going to be super useful. I don't need the weighted norms. Oh, that's odd. So I'm going to select all these edges again and just soften them because they should not be hard edges. But this tool is very useful. You can create a duplicate of your object. Why is the live boolean not working? It should be working. I'll figure that out later, but it's a pretty cool tool. It basically, it's like ZBrush booleans, if you know what that is, which you probably don't, but that's okay. Okay, those are all the tools. I'll show you how to get them, or show you how to set them up. So Windows, Settings, Preferences, Hotkey Editor, and this is where you're going to set up the hotkeys if it opens for your modeling, more or less. Here we go. So this is my default duplicate. I just set it that because that's the way I do it. Here's my X-ray script. So basically I have my script and then I set the hotkey. The blue shows that they're assigned, unassigned. I just set it to Alt-X. It'll tell you it's assigned, but you don't really need Alt-X ever. So don't worry about, you need Control-Z though, Alt-X. So don't change it. I would leave it the way it is, or change it to X-ray. Then there's menu items. Here is where, not menu items, other items, yeah. We're gonna scroll down in other items to custom user marking menus. And this is where the marking menus I made. Oh wait, no, that's not it. Here it is. You go to regular marking menus. And this is where, where are my marking menus? I just had them. Well, no, these are it. These are my marking menus. So it is user marking menus. These are the other ones. My bad. I got confused because I renamed them. So my marking menus are set to Alt-C. You just click on the press Alt-C and then it'll automatically fill in the release. Mark press, so Alt-V, and then it'll automatically fill in the release. So this is where you're going to set up the hotkeys. Those are the only hotkeys I use. The rest of the ones I'll show you are preset hotkeys. These are the ones these are the only ones you'll have to set up. Same with settings, marking menu editor. Here is where we make our marking menus. Your marking menus are already going to be made for you. You just have to download them and put them in the right folder, and I'll show you how to do that. But click on Mark, and when you click on Mark, you're going to want to edit marking menu. Oh, oops, not edit marking menu. And you just have to make it, instead of hotbox, put it to hotkey editor, and this will allow you to make it the hotkey it is. Same with this one. Just right here, settings, adjust this to hotkey editor. Okay, to move these hotkeys, we're going to open 2 of these. To set your hotkeys, or to download the hotkeys I gave you, you're going to have to, so take them from the downloads folder. You're going to go to Maya 2018 Preferences, and there's going to be a hotkey folder here. It'll be empty. You're just going to drag the hotkey, the stuff that's in the hotkey folder I send you into this place, and it'll automatically set my preferences or bring in my hotkeys for you guys. You're also going to do this with icons, scripts. So all of these things I'm going to send you, and you just drag them into these folders. Plugins, Roadkill. We may not use Roadkill till later. And shelves. So this is all the stuff. I'm just going to send you guys my preferences folder, and you're going to want to drag in all this stuff too. I'm pretty sure it's the same, but just basically delete your preferences folder in Maya and drag this one in, and it will fill in all your stuff, and then you just have to set them up. If you have this shelf, all the scripts will automatically be set to this, hopefully. If you have any issues, please let me know, but this should be automatically set up. These are sculpting tools. These are just because sometimes you need to sculpt and move stuff in Maya. This thing's low poly. It's too low poly to sculpt in, but I just use the tools sometimes if I need to get a certain shape real fast. But most of the time I just take things to ZBrush. So these are sculpting tools. This is the old sculpting tool I highly recommend using. I actually prefer it than the new one because it kind of tells me a bit more about what I'm actually doing with the object, which is pretty cool. So I use this one most of the time, but I also use the new ones. This is center, or merge to center. So this tool is really useful for cylinders. Just going to delete this top face. Control E is extrude, which basically brings up this menu. You can extrude inward. It basically just creates a duplicate of the face. Extrude up and down. The red one is weird. It does like a rotate thing. It depends what you're doing, but that's usually what it does. If you click here, you can scale from the center, but since my center pivot is in the wrong spot, it's not going to do that because I'm using the extrude function. So what I'm working in right now is local translate. So you can go out, in. Offset is up and down. It depends what object you're using. Thickness is usually what I go for instead of local translate, but it's fine. And then keep faces together on or off. If you want to turn it off, what you can do is you can create these like separate faces. So if I extruded these 3 faces and turned keep faces off, I would get different objects, if that makes sense. See? So instead of being together and continuing this shape, they do this. If I turn it back on, it merges back together and continues that shape. Also, I grabbed that side for some reason. But yeah, divisions is if you want to add like edge loops around it. We mostly won't do that just because we can add in them our own way. But that's the extrude tool. Control Z is undo and go back, as it is in every program. If you want to isolate an object, which basically means have it be the only object in the scene. Say I don't want to see this one, but I just want to see this one. Press Control 1, and it'll hide the other object. There's no way to get the other object back until you press Control 1 again. You can select multiple objects and do it. You see how it says Isolate in the bottom? It's this little thing too, if you want to just press it. Isolate selection. And it just picks one object and isolates it. Actually, I should probably show you guys this in a better scene. I'm gonna treads. Should I show you the? I'll open it in the drone. Let me see if I can find the right drone. Drone set. There we go. Okay. Continue. So I'm gonna show you guys how I do certain tools and stuff like that. Are there any questions yet at all? While I continue before I start blocking in shapes for the models. I'll continue working as... No? Is that Ashley? Is that no show?
Would you give us a refresher once we download the program?
What do you mean?
Because it's hard to see what you're clicking.
Oh, yes. I can give you a quick refresher once you guys have it all. Sorry. Can you guys see two screens or one screen? Okay, just wondering, because I have two screens open. That's how I'm doing this. But yes, so this is pretty high topology. I actually have a lot of this I need to fix. It's kind of fucked up, but that's okay. So I'm going to isolate this object and show you guys a little bit more about certain tools. So if you have, there's these top menus right here. There's character controls you're not going to use. Toolbox, which is this thing I'm about to open. There's attribute editor, tool editor, and channel box. So you're going to want channel box, tool settings, modeling toolkit, and attribute editor. Tool settings. If I'm using the move tool, this allows me to change the axis orientation of the entire object. So world and object right now are kind of the same. But if I go in world mode, and rotate and move the object this way, and then go back to object mode, press W, I guess it continues being correct. But now if I go to world, it's going to be directly related to the world axis, which is just a flat plane. Let me turn that on. So now it's following this path. But if I switch it to object, it follows the orientation of the object. Component mode is if I select a face and I want just that face, the orientation of that face, it gives me that. Sorry, this scene's kind of huge, so it's weird to rotate in. But if I go back to object mode, it switches to follow the path of the object. In most cases, it stays the same as component, but sometimes it's weird, so you might have to switch between the two. You can also do normal. I don't think we'll really use that, so object, world, and component are what you need. So if I switch it to world, it goes back to following the straight up and down. Oh, that's really funny looking. There we go, straight up and down. But yeah, this tool is pretty good. If you want to snap, if you want to move things without retaining component spacing, which basically means if I want to move this stuff and keep components, for snapping. So if I snap all this stuff, 1 second, if I just snap it back, it all moves together. But if I turn off retain component spacing, it's gonna snap it all directly. All the points will be snapped to this orientation. And if I middle click, you see when it becomes a circle, that means you're snapping, which means you're holding V. So if I middle click, grab that, and try and snap it to things, all those points just merge together. And you don't usually want that to happen unless you're trying to fix something you fucked up. So I recommend keeping on retained component spacing. No, I don't want to save. And that should do that. Let's see. Soft selection is really useful. So if you select vertex and stuff, press B, turns off on soft selection, and it's basically like a move tool, like a sculpting move tool that allows you to adjust things based on their glowiness. So the yellow is very it's going to be like, oh, this is going to move with it. Orange is a little less moving, red's a little less, black's barely, and then if it's still this like blue color, it means it's not going to be affected at all. So that's soft selection. Symmetry, I don't know if we need to use it. Sometimes I do, but most of the time I avoid it. If I'm working on symmetrical objects, I just grab both sides rather than worry about the symmetry tool, because sometimes it's a bit finicky. If you're using the symmetry tool, it has to be set based on these two axes, or axes, or all three of them, the up one, two, or else it won't work properly, just because it bases it off the center. Sometimes it works on the object. It's object or world. I just recommend sticking to world and keeping it in the center. Common selection, marquee, drag, all this stuff. So this stuff you won't usually need to worry about. Same with joint orientation and smart duplicate settings. A tool we will be using a lot is the bevel tool. So for bevel tool, it's Control B, and then it brings up this little menu. If you don't get this little menu when you bevel, let's say I don't have this menu on. I actually don't know how to turn it off. Here. So I'm done. This object has now been beveled. If I go input here and click on this bevel thing, I can continue to adjust that bevel. And here, let me get my little image. I have an image saved that should help explain how beveling works if I know where it is. Maybe I don't know where it is. Never mind. But I'll go over that real quick. Oh, I just deleted that. We're just going to go to a new scene. Don't save. Oh, how good is Maya generally for organically smushing and sculpting? It's not bad. Yeah, it's small too. One screen, but it's smaller than ours. Oh, okay, gotcha. It's okay for sculpting. It's just when it gets too high poly, Maya can't handle the thing. It's too strong for Maya, so it just doesn't work. Like if I go over a couple thousand polys, Maya's going to slow down and start crashing. But in ZBrush, you can go millions and millions of polys without it crashing. I would say ZBrush is the best bet for sculpting. And I'll show you guys how to download that after this. So here is a cube. Beveling a cube is selecting an edge and pressing Control B, and it creates this slice, a 45-degree slice through the object. This is the size of it based on fractions. So if I want it smaller, I just make it, you can just type 0.1, and if that's still too big, you can go 0.5, 0.05, there we go, and stuff like that. Segments basically break it up, but segments break it up into a curve. So now it's a curve. If I want it just one, it's a smaller curve, but it starts creating curve the more segments you add. Depth is like you want an in and out bevel or an out bevel. So that's pretty useful too. So if you want to curve in or out. So if you have like a weirdly shaped edge and you want it to look better, you can do stuff like this. We're going to go over this later when I do more of it. Auto miltering. Set what to 2? Oh, this? No, I don't think it goes to, I guess it does. It bulges out. It's kind of weird looking. So you can create some pretty cool stuff with that. Let's see if it's set to 10. Oh, that's interesting. So you can do stuff like that with it. Didn't know that. Or I've never really tried, but that's pretty cool. I'd probably use that sometimes. Chamfer is basically whether or not you want to keep your edge. So with chamfer on, it just flattens this. It gets rid of the edge that used to be there. Is there a way to adjust the curvature without bulging? Yeah. Do you mean like just making it curve? Because if you have it just at 1, it'll just create a perfect curve. So if you have depth at 1, make it more slightly curve. Or make it a more slight curve. Oh yeah, you can just adjust it from less than 1 and go up and stuff like that. So it's like 1 now. If I go down, it'll flatten out slowly. So you can make it like a partial circle, I guess, or a flat circle. Yeah, stuff like that. But yeah, chamfer is how if you leave chamfer off, most of the time I would recommend leaving it off. It keeps that edge for you. This is only if you're doing a 3-keyed model, you'd leave chamfer off. I'm going to teach you guys how to do it without 3-key. More a slight curve. Yeah, so you just use the depth to do that, Teresa, probably. Chamfer on and off. I recommend just leaving it off because that's how we're going to model for most of this class. But you see how like the topology now is weird? This is now a 5-sided face instead of a 4. So this is bad. You don't want this shape. It's an n-gon, which means that it's more than 5 sides. So to break it up, I would either do that and this. This is really bad. I wouldn't actually do this just because it's so small, but that's a way to do it. You want to make sure everything is 4-sided or 3-sided. Triangles or quads only in Maya. Otherwise it won't work. So this face right here will not work. So I'm going to just take off that bevel. Oh, I did so many tools and moves. There we go. Okay. If I select object mode and bevel, or Control B, it'll bevel the whole object. And I'm going to set that. So now this is a cube with edges. It's better to do quads. Quads are always better than tris, but sometimes you can't avoid tris. So yeah. So now that I've beveled it this way, there's no n-gons. Quads are better like understood by the programs. So if you take it into another program, it'll work better. Or if you're doing rigging, the riggers need quads pretty much for the entire model, or else the mesh, when they set it up for rigging, it'll warp and look really weird. So it'll be like a really shitty 3D animatable character. It just won't move correctly. So quads are good. Same with weapons. Anything that deforms or moves or changes shape needs to be quads, because tris, you get points when they try to move, just because they're triangles, so they start creating pyramids, while the quads you can get more like wavy shapes, so that's usually why. But yeah, so this now, if I bevel the whole object, it'll do this. It's the same if I just bevel this set of edges. That's, oops, extrude, bevel. It's just gonna keep them connected. Ugh. Yeah, so I get the bevel without losing any quads. Okay. Are there any more questions before I start going over blocking for the class? Blocking for the weapons and stuff and setting up the scene. Okay. First things first, I'm going to go to preferences and where is it? Grid. Oh, oops, wrong menu. Grid. I'm going to click here in the grid, and you see it says length and width of the grid is this. Subdivisions, all that. One second, I'm being yelled at.
Oh, it's okay, no worries.
Close the door, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Whittler.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry about that. Your grid is set this way. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to change the grid. Where is that tool? I always forget where it is. Where is it? Settings, preferences. I'm pretty sure it's just preferences. But we're going to click through real fast because I always lose where this stuff is. Settings, no. I might just have to go back and show you guys this later because I might have lost where it is. Is that it? Yes. Grid snapping. No, never mind. I might have to go back and check where this is because I may have lost it in the span of a day while I was looking for it yesterday to show you guys how to do it. But basically what we what we're gonna do is we're gonna set the grid size to real life size because we want our object to be set up in space as a real life object. Actually, there's another way I can do that. So what I'm gonna do is import a 6 foot tall character. So like a character I can use that is 6 feet tall. Baseman, OBJ. And I'll give this to you guys. So this is a guy who is 6 feet tall. And you see how small the grid is? So if I bring an object into the grid, it's going to be that size. And if you're making a weapon and you make it this size, and then you put it in the dude's hand, that's too small. That's going to be a tiny sword that will not fit in his hand. And if you make it that way and then try and scale it up, sometimes it doesn't work and you're not able to scale it correctly to fit the dude's hand. Like this right now is probably a good size for a human hand. But I would not recommend it. Just because it's going to be more difficult. So what I would do is I'm going to just change the grid size. And the grid lines every 10 units. Length and width. I'm going to switch this to 500. So now you see it's more giant, but instead of every 5 units, I'm going to set it to every 10, just so it doesn't hurt my eyes. And if you want to change it, you can change it to every 20. And this will be easier. This is how you'll start working with stuff. You can also change the color. I recommend just leaving it the way it is. Just gray, middle gray. Just because if you change it too much, you might forget how to do it. But yeah, so this is the size of my character. Or the character that would be in the game, roughly. It's just a rough size. You're going to leave this in because this will be super useful when you're like setting it all up. Like you just leave this character in the scene and you can go back and check your scale based on that. So, first thing we need to do, will the base, yes, you spawn and still be the same size, tiny and all. Will the base objects? Yes, the base objects will still be spawned small, but you just scale them up and then work on them. It's not a huge issue. It's kind of a pain, but you get used to it. So first thing we're going to do is we need an image plane. An image plane is basically the size of our object. So this, for me, for a gun, since I'm doing the gun, is too big. I'm going to lower it a bit because our objects come in at the center of the grid and I want them to stay there, but I want to be able to see this too. So I'll have this view and come on, there we go. Sometimes it does that weird thing. Yeah, top view. So I want top view for the thing we're about to do. And I'm gonna block in the Glock because I already blocked in the revolver, and I also think that's gonna be a bit of a difficult ask. But first thing you're gonna do is click this object, your image plane, and you're gonna click this in your little window, the bars above in your verts and edge thing. If you click this one that looks like a checkerboard, it's called textured. If you leave it on long enough, this is what you click. Just click it once, and if it has the blue outline, then it's on. So now what I'm going to do is right click, go to assign favorite material, and we're going to assign it a Lambert. Any Lambert is fine, just click Lambert. And then it should open up your attribute editor. If you don't open up your attribute editor, just click on it or find it, and then go into this bar and find Lambert 2. Click that. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in an image. I don't know why it means favorite. I think it's just all the ones that are in there, like defaultly, is why it's favorites, but it's just a weird thing. We're going to do the Glock. So I'm going to go here in my Myosine. You go to color, click the checkerboard, click file, and then it should give you image name, and you search the folders. I'm going to go to desktop and just find the image of the Glock I want to use. I'll use this one. So now it brings in the image of the Glock, but as you can see, the Glock is warped as shit. Like, that is a very small barrel for the Glock. The reason for that is that your image is not proportional to the scale, like this. So what I'm going to need to do is right click on this image, go to properties, and check the scale and details. So this object's 1603 by 1080. So that's what I'm going to change this scale to. 16.03 by 10.80. And now it's proportionate. Now it's the correct proportion. And then you just scale it back up. I'm going to bring the guy over here so I can check to see if the scale's any good. So just going to put his hand right in the center. And you see how I can see the gun in this one, but not this one? So you just have to click that little checkerboard circle, too, in that one. So what I'm going to do is scale this down. I'm going to zoom in a bit. I'm working in the mirror. I'm just going to scale it down until it feels right, size-wise, in both. Because this is a little small there, so let's upgrade it a bit. And that seems like a good size. Another way you can do it is... which I'll actually, here, let me look this up real quick. You guys, I can show you this. Just because, oh, yeah, that's the thing. I'll show you guys. But, hello? What was that?
I dropped my tablet pen on the computer and
Sorry guys, I'm just double checking something real quick before I give you information. I don't want to say the wrong thing because that will fucking suck for me later. I guess we're just gonna, here we go. Oh, sorry, autosave just re-clicked itself as it does whenever oh yeah, I should show you guys how to turn on autosave. Here we go. So we're gonna go back to preferences, settings, file and projects. Yes, here we go. So here's autosave. I recommend you turn this on because if you don't, you're gonna get what I call green death. Green death is when your scene destroys itself and leaves a few pieces of your model just green, which is very sad and very hard and very tiring when you've worked on a model for like 4 hours, saved it, left, come back, and it's dead. So I'm going to show you guys how to hopefully not do what I did, because you saw that drone I made. That happened to my drone where it went green and I lost most of it. So I had to remodel all of those pieces and I wanted to die. Is there a fast way to make an object twice as big? Yes. So that's the scale. So in scale, you can just select all of them and type in a number and it'll automatically set it. I think there is a way to just make the objects the same scale, but I've never really looked into it because it's not a huge issue for me. I can just scale them up, and I'm gonna do it anyway. But I can look that up just to double check for you. But yeah, so normally you should just. You said the person is 6 feet. Are things in Maya actually defined relative to feet and stuff like Photoshop? You can set it that way. I have mine set to centimeters because metric is the way to go in Maya. Because I honestly, if you're using feet and inches in Maya, it's not gonna. Most of the programs are not using inches and feet. They're using centimeters and millimeters and all that stuff. So if you don't use centimeters, millimeters, and all that stuff, those other programs are going to get really annoyed. So you see here, my working units are centimeters, just because I like that. So units, I'll show that in a sec. But here, so file, you're going to enable prompt before save. I just recommend so you can know when it's limit the autosaves. I have 10 set, so after 10 autosaves, it turns off. My interval is 15 minutes. I'm going to set that back to 45 or 30. I had it set to 15 because I had a lot of issues making my drone. So I recommend just setting it. Then you can either save it to projects or a named folder, and this will tell you where it is. So I have desktop autosave folder, and it just saves there a copy of your file. Super useful. But yeah, so this entire scene is done in units. And what is bad about too frequent autosaves? You're just gonna fill your computer with extra crap you don't need, basically. It's just like it just takes up space. You can, but it just takes up space. If you're having a lot of issues, I'd recommend shortening it. So this is the length and width of the grid. It's in units. So this is 500 centimeters. The grid right now is 500 centimeters. And there's a grid line every 20 centimeters. So basically, this person is 6 feet tall. I don't know how many centimeters that is because I know conversion rates. But you're going to want to make the gun relatively the size it is. So here's the gun. Come on. There we go. Sorry, I have it on a screen that's smaller. Oh, the fuck? Why is it selected? But on here is the length of the gun, 202 millimeters. So millimeters are 1,000th of a centimeter. So actually, wait, that doesn't make any damn sense. They're a hundredth. Sorry, they're a hundredth or a tenth. Tenth? Yeah, they're a tenth. So this would be around 82. No, I'm an idiot. This would be 20.2 centimeters long is how long the gun is. Side length is 18.6 centimeters long. The width is 32, so it's 3.2 centimeters wide and all that stuff. And this is the height, all this. So you're going to use this to create the scale. So 202 millimeters, which is 20.2 centimeters. Now, I know that each of these squares is 20 centimeters. So this is 20, 40, 60, 80, all that fun stuff. Or is it actually... Sorry. It is set to centimeters. Well, I guess this guy is... He's actually 6 feet. Let's measure him. Well, I'll do that later. But yeah. So you're going to want to scale it to what it would actually be in size. But you don't need to, because this gun is already set up. It's proportionate to the picture. So you just have this, and it's all good. So we're going to move the guy out of the way. Now we're going to go to the basics of class. So, to block in your gun, you're basically going to be making copies of these shapes. You're going to try and copy these shapes. So, I know for a fact, we're going to work in top view just because it's a bit easier, that this top shape is pretty much just a rectangle. Like, honestly, it's just a very long rectangle with a curved top. So we're going to move this. Just going to center it. Center. There we go. Okay. I also recommend adding this to a layer. Just if you see this bottom right corner, this piece of paper with the ball on it, click that, and it adds the plane to a layer. And then double click the empty space till you get to reference, and now I can't select it so I don't accidentally pick it up while I'm trying to model. And you see that I'm just using the move and scale tool to get this to roughly the right size. There's also going to be a top and a side view. So you see here, I'm going to probably want to bring in another plane. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees or negative 90, depending how Maya feels, and scale it up. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before and just assign a favorite, Lambert, and we're going to just go to check colored checker file image, And we're going to go for our side view, which is going to be down the barrel of the gun. Like that. So now, it looks weird, because it's also not the same proportion as it is here. So we're just going to go to properties and do that all again. And 7.46 by 10.6. 7.46 by 10.6. And now it's proportionately the same. Sorry. This is not on the center axis as I told you it should be. So recenter pivot and just snap it there, drop it down. And this one I'm going to just snap to this one. Oop, come on. There we go. So yeah. And to see that one, we're going to go to right view, and it shows us this gun. But since the scale is off, you see how these are now not proportionate? Our scale for this one, or the original size of this object was, or this plane was 16.03. So it's gotten a lot bigger. And so, I might have to, I'm just going to have to rescale this. 16.03, and then we'll just have to scale them both together. Sometimes it's just easier if you scale them both together, because then you won't have to worry about trying to match the size exactly again, which is a super pain. And then 10.8. Okay, so I know I want the X scale to be roughly 40, so I'm just going to scale it till I get to roughly 40. There we go. So roughly 40. And now they're pretty much the same size. At least that's the goal. Yeah, they're pretty much the same size. And I'm also going to center this one vertically on the axis. So now my gun can be set up. So I drag it here, and you see that the size of the top and the side view is a little bit off. If you type 2 into the scale, would it make it twice as big, or does it always have to base the size of multiplying by? No, you can type 2 and it'll just double the size if the scale's set to 1. So if you need to reset the scales of your objects, go to Modify, Freeze Transforms, and it sets it all back to 0 and the scale back to 1. And that's how you do that. So you can see right here I'm having an issue where it's not the correct size. Width-wise. So I have it right there. So now I'm just trying to line up the pictures so they're a bit more correct. This is slightly at an angle because you can see the top of it. That's why. Is it going to do that for a specific object, or does it do that to all? You can do it for specific objects. The scale of each object is separate, so you can just do it for specific ones. So the scale of this plane is different than the scale of this rectangle. So yeah, we're going to change the width of this to be more correct. Going to also make sure it's still set to the center axis. If your photo's not correct, favor one side, I recommend. It'll just make your life easier. So now I'm trying to, there we go, and drag it this way. So now it's pretty much where I want it to be. Yeah, I want to separate it out by what the object is. So Alt X is look through, and now I can see through my object and drag it around without any issues. Yes. So quickly, I'm going to just talk about how you should model these parts. When modeling, you're going to always want to think about what pieces are connected and what aren't. So you see how this piece here is not connected to this top part. That's the way you're going to model it. If it's not connected, you're going to model it that way. However, that is pretty much, but first you're going to want to block in the big shapes. And then you're going to break it apart into pieces. So this big shape right here, I would just block as a rectangle. And then later on, I would cut out these pieces. and you may have to retopologize them, but that's basically how you're going to do it. For this week, you're just going to make block-in shapes of your object. I'm not too worried about what you guys do, but just you're going to want to block in well, and then I'll show you how to do the rest. So this week shouldn't be too bad for work. It's just blocking shapes. So you see here, this is a cylinder. I'd block these shapes in as a cylinder and then just squish them in. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you that right now. So I have this. I'm going to go back to perspective view just because I like working in this view most of the time because I can see it as it is. Does anyone have any questions? Am I talking too fast? All the above. Sienna, judge me. Judge my soul. Okay, good. Yeah. Sorry. If you have an object selected, you can't create a prism quickly. So I'm going to just snap it to this x-axis. If I want this center point, I have this fun little tool called cluster, deform cluster, and it creates the center. It creates a vertex at the center of your object, which is really useful if you're trying to center other objects around it. So see here, now I can center my object based on that, and it's perfectly set up to be the center of this prism. Now I just rotate it so it actually lines up correctly. Control X so I can figure out the scale. Remember, we're working on half the object. And since this picture is weird, I'm not going to try and get it to fit perfectly in the image. I'm trying to get it sit in the center of the object because that's how it actually is. And I'm just scaling it up to do that. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it, right there. And I'm just having it jut out. We're going to switch to top view here. And I don't want to jut. I want it to jut out as far as this one does. So you see this picture is also a little bit off because this isn't completely fat. It's curving. If you took this picture hopefully correctly in an orthographic view, it would just be flat like this. So don't worry too much about that, okay? Because that'll just fuck you up. So we'll go back to right view, and we see here we got this same thing. So we're just going to duplicate and drag it down. But this one's smaller. It's quite a bit smaller. So I'm just going to shrink it down and try and center it the correct way. And you see here, I'm going to just drag this. Actually, I'll leave it the way it is. But I'm going to, there's a cylinder shape that kind of is created to cover. And it's actually not a full cylinder. So I'm going to drag this down here. And then I want it to go past the sphere. And you see here that that kind of looks funky, but it also looks like the object. So later on we'll merge these together. Right now I'm just trying to get an idea of what they'll look like. So we're just creating that shape. So now you see that I can also set my vertex here and just snap it, and now it's set. So I have that shape, that curved part. To me, in the image, it actually looks more curved than the way I set it, so I might just stretch this out a bit. Oh, but I'm going to set it back to the center and just stretch it back out. So because I want it to keep its cylindrical shape. Otherwise, it's not going to look the same as it does in this, if that makes sense. So I got that. Now we're going to go back to top view. And we're going to start blocking in a few more shapes. So for this handle, I'm going to say we're going to quadra it, and just to get the shape in correctly, because it's kind of complex. It's got all these curves and bumps, and doing this with a polygonal form is very difficult and time consuming. Well, not really, it's just tiring and annoying, but that's why we're going to do it. We're also going to just duplicate this square and bring it down and just kind of line it up with the bottom of this object. And it's okay that right now, there we go, that this piece, inner piece, isn't as visible, the one I'm talking about, the curve we just made, because I'm not going to worry about that too much. And I'm going to just drag this down so it matches here, because as you can see in this image right here, there's going to be a gap, so I'm just going to separate these two. Right now they'll be the same, but you'll see later on. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to create a prism for this little triangle piece. And you see, like, I can see part of it right now. Stop. There we go. I'm just gonna do that and just scale it in until I get the shape I want. Stop it. There we go. And I'm gonna have to fix it in the front or the right view so it actually looks the correct shape. So you see how we're gonna scale it out to roughly the size it is here. And then we're just gonna scale it in to get that nice shape here. Don't worry about this little hole. We'll worry about that later. It's pretty much like I want you guys to just make a base block out, just so you guys understand how it's gonna be like a practicing tools week, and then the next 2 weeks will be more modeling heavy. This week is gonna be more like setup and getting to understand how certain tools work. And the best part about this is that the fact that I'm doing it all on the center axis is it's already perfectly centered in every direction, which is how you want to model things most of the time. You just want them centered on something. It just makes it easier. So I'm going to do the same thing with this one. And you see how I'm not worrying about objects crashing through. A big thing that I think it upsets me is that we talk a lot about how objects should just be one model, but nowadays all objects are modeled like they're modeled in real life. They're pieces. The low poly may not be a piece, like all the pieces separated, but most of the time with the high poly, you want to separate each piece out as its own separate polygonal mesh, just because it makes it so much easier to do and work with. But low polys are usually not that way. They're consolidated, but they still have their own separate pieces. You don't have to make a low poly mesh all the same. It doesn't have to be one object. Each visual chunk or each actual distinctive piece, like the parts of the gun. Each distinctive piece. Visual chunks, it depends how you're modeling. You might have a visual piece that is higher poly than the others, and so you might do that, but most of the time, no. It's just the pieces. So that's why I've split these into 2 different rectangles rather than just pulling this one down all the way, because it's going to be 2 separate parts of the gun. And now we're going to go to top view. And you see how this is kind of chunky, and it should actually end up there. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to say it ends up there, because it does. You can adjust this later, but I'm just doing a rough in. So now let's do the shape of the gun. So we're going to click here, click on our plane. If you still have it locked, unlock it and then select it. You're going to go up to this magnet. It says make this object selection alive. You're going to click this. You will suddenly not be able to select this object. That's okay. You're going to go to Modeling Toolkit in the right, and you're going to go to Quad Draw. Quad Draw is a fantastic tool that should be taught everywhere. It lets you draw out geometry. I recommend trying to keep your geometry even. Even is the best way to model. If your topology is even, you're modeling a good model. I say that because even is easier to not have tries than odd. If you have odd edge loops and faces, you might have to have a... I'll show you, Teresa. It's basically what I'm doing right now. So right now I'm just drawing out the outline of my object. And I'm just going to do this top part because this is a separate piece and I don't want to mess it up. And I can also probably just do this with a piece of geometry if I want. But this is a very curved and organic shape, so it should be drawn out in a way that is curved and organic. And we're going to overlap this shape real quick just because I want it to look correct. We're just going to draw back to here. We can also do this part. We're just going to make going to cut out the shape for the hole for the trigger. We're not going to actually do the trigger. The trigger we can draw out separately because it'll be its own object. I'm adding a lot of edge loops here just because these areas are curved. so it's gonna require more. So this is just left click. If you hold shift, you can start creating these polygonal faces with what you made with the dots. Try and keep it even. Sometimes you might want to do it odd. I might do this. Yeah, there we go. And I might even add more edge loops, or more dots, so I can keep this flowing in a way that doesn't look weird. So here, this looks weird. I can deal with that later. Right now I'm just trying to get a base shape. So remember, try and keep it as even as possible. So there. You see how I'm starting to build out the shape? This is what Quadra is really useful for. We're just gonna go across here because I wanna get my edge loops to go across the form rather than diagonally. You want to keep your, if you can keep your like direction of your lines, like these edges, straight up and down as best you can, that's fantastic. That's the easiest way to model, and it's really easy to work with because it has good edge flow and good topology. So here, what I'm going to do is create, I don't actually need this right now, so I'm going to get rid of it. I'll just delete it in a second, but just want to create this even topology. And now I have these extra edges in the middle, so I just have to create those dots and start drawing across. Same here, I want to go across, so just trying to keep it even. Gotta do more of these. I'm gonna just keep doing this real fast, and then I'll show you guys what I do after. We're basically just gonna extrude it and go into the side view and roughly block out the shape using that. It'll just make it easier. Sorry, my computer's lagging a bit, so if my dots are appearing out of nowhere, that's why. My computer don't like me no more. Oh god, there we go. No, stop it. Sometimes Quadra's kind of a bitch, you know. It's just Maya. Maya's a bitch. Not the person, but the program. Oh my god, stop it. See, it's not letting me I just want to, there we go. That's what I wanted all along. Just want to make that face. So yeah, I'm going to do this for, yeah, I'll do it for the whole object. And another thing I can do is I can just press tab and grab a face and it'll extend it automatically. So I'll just do this for a little bit of it. And then just create, oh, nope, come on. See, it's kind of finicky sometimes. My teacher during the class also had issues with it, and he was just like, I'm so tired of this. I use Quadra all the time. Quadra is fantastic. It's probably one of the most useful tools you can use in Maya. Come on. And if you press Control and click, you can create that edge that I just made. Does anyone have any questions while I'm doing this? Because this is kind of just a time where I'm blocking in shapes for you guys so you guys can see. Does anyone have any questions about how to model certain things? Or, well, I guess we'll go over that later in the class.
So far, you said that we should use that other program.
Yes.
Will you get to that this time, or should we just try to do that in Maya?
Oh god, no. What you're gonna do is you'll block in the shapes in Maya. So like the desk, you're gonna make like the rectangular shape of the desk in Maya. I'm just gonna make this a try. I'm just gonna quickly do all this stuff. So this looks like ass, but it'll work for now. Just so I can show you guys how to do it, or what I'm doing. So I have to center this on the center axis. So now I have my shape. I have the shape I want, so I'm going to go back to right view, the shape of the gun. I'm going to just center this on the center axis. And then I'm going to extrude it out. So it's also a bit weird. and then select these faces. We're going to go, oh, sorry. You got to turn off make live surfaces or else your surface will, here, let me just show you. It'll just snap to the surface again. You don't want that because you want to be able to model. But yeah, so we're going to take this object and we're going to scale it a bit more because we want the actual thickness. There we go. That's probably a good thickness. Center pivot and just snap it back to the x-axis. So now we have this shape. We have a roughly blocked in shape of the gun. We're quickly going to do this bottom part and the trigger. But this is pretty much all you need for a block in. How do you snap? You press V to snap to vertices, which are the objects like little points, like these are vertices, vertexes. And you hold X to snap to the grid. You can snap up and down the grid and stuff like that. But honestly, this is like, for a rough lay-in, this is rough. This is all you really need. Most of the time, though, I go pretty in-depth and make my block-ins much more detailed, just because personally that's the way I like to do it. Not everyone does, but I just kind of like my block-ins to be a little more clean, so I can just use it straight away to make my object. I'm just gonna adjust certain things because I want it to look better. There we go. So I want it to not have that weird piece sticking out. But yeah, this is like a rough block-in of a gun. So you can see that most of these pieces, if I go to the thing, are all connected. At least this shell, like this whole casing area, is pretty much the same, except you see this little back piece right here. You're going to have to cut that out. We'll do that later. And there's a seam going down the center of the gun. Don't worry about the seam. We're not going to model it. I can show you how to fake that. The top of the gun, we're going to model in the ejector port, which is this piece. So we might have to look up an image of what it actually looks like because we can only see this part of it. So a lot of what we do in modeling is just finding out what things are. This is all going to be one piece. This block part and then this cylinder. And then these little, the barrels are going to be their own separate pieces. The trigger is going to be its own separate piece. This is going to be its own separate piece. The bolts are going to be their own separate pieces, and the cartridge will. And so will this button, actually. This button's going to be its own separate piece. All the buttons. The safety. Or, that's not the safety. Where's the safety? I think that's the safety. I don't know how guns work too well. I just like the mechanism. And I'll show you guys how to make all these dots and stuff. But for now, just create a rough block-in of the gun. If you want to go more detailed with it, go for it. This is just how most people do it. Let's go back to the top view real quick. So yeah, I would also quickly just quad draw in the shape of this object. It's just going to be like that. And I know this curves, so I actually didn't finish that shape. I just drew it. So I know this is going to curve, and I know that's going to curve. So I can actually just make this square. Because I'm just going to make it curve the second I model it. So I bring it up. I'm just going to extrude it so it has thickness. And if you get black when you extrude, like if you're extruding things and it gets this black look to it, that means your normals are wrong, in the wrong direction. So what you're going to do is go to object mode, click the object. You're going to go to mesh display, reverse, and click reverse, and it'll bring it back to what it should be, which is this nice off-white color, or gray, not off-white. Oops, not front view, sorry, right view. So now I'm just, you see how it's not actually fitting with the image anymore, but this is just like a rough, it's basically inside out. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's just inside out. So yeah, so I now have, this is just going to be what it looks like. And since it's a block in, I can just extrude it in. Sorry, I pressed Control 1 to separate and then extrude. I'm just going to grab and drag. And since it's going to follow the edge flow of the gun. So it's going to go in up at an angle like this, because that's how the cartridge works. We're going to look up how the cartridge actually is modeled when we actually model it, but right now for a block in, this is fine. And then we're going to do the same thing with the trigger. So we're just gonna block in the trigger, and we'll do the same thing with the trigger. Is we'll find like an image, or I'm going to make you guys look for it, an image that is this shows you the shape of the actual inner part of the trigger, because you see the outer part of the trigger, and then there's going to be this kind of like weird rounded shape for the inner part of the trigger, at least for most guns. That's how it works. So at this stage, the process is the same no matter what object you choose, right? Yeah, the process is the exact same, because even with the wooden objects, you should have a blocked-in shape that looks like this, roughly. Because you're gonna take that into ZBrush to start modeling. Sorry guys, I'm just gonna make this real rough because I want to get this done quickly. But you guys should make yours not rough because it'll look ugly like this does right now. So this is just gonna be my rough trigger. I'm just gonna extrude it up. No, Willow, you can't come in. I'm working. Oh my god, Willow. Willow's like attacking my door right now. Okay. And we're just gonna snap it to the center axis. So roughly right now, you could say that this is a low poly gun. So this is roughly what I want it to look like. If you want, you can go in more detail. The handle, this like, or the arm grip is going to be the hard part of this gun, and this little divot to make it look right, but I'll show you guys. It shouldn't be as difficult as the revolver is. But yeah, this is going to be your block-in. It's not your low poly, it's just a block-in of the shapes, so you start getting a 3D feel for the gun. Got it? Is there any more questions? I have one more thing to show you guys, but yeah. Any questions while I look for my thing? Oh, where is it? Where did I put it? Oh, it's a personal. Okay. Edge flow. So yeah, the homework for this week is block out your figure. Okay, yeah. So for the class, I'm going to give you guys this little sheet thing. It won't look like this. Mine looks like this because I've been working on it and I've modeled all these pieces. I don't know what happened to that one. I think I deleted it accidentally. I'm going to have you guys basically create these shapes to be 3-keyable. So if you look at this shape right now, if I press 1, it's a simple rectangular shape. If I press 3, you get these nice edges and bevels, and look how nice it looks. It's so smooth and clean, but it's all one object. Same thing with this one, it's all one object. And this is way higher poly than you need, but same with this, it's all one object. And you're just going to do this. This is an exercise for you guys to start figuring out edge flow to make things look good when you smooth it, if you smooth it. Because if it doesn't look good before you smooth, it's not going to look good when you smooth, if that makes sense. So this exercise will show you all this. You guys aren't going to do this part. This part's pretty difficult to understand right off the bat. So I'll have you guys stick with probably these ones, this. These ones aren't terrible, but they're not the easiest to do. So we might just start with these first few so you guys can figure out how to model certain things together in Maya. If you guys have questions, you can ask, but it's basically what exactly are we doing with them? Okay, here. I'm gonna make you. This is a cube. Oop. Nope. This is another cube. you are trying to create this object from these two objects. So right now I have these two objects, and I want to make it look like this object. You're just recreating them. So I'm going to take this face, extrude, scale it in till it's the shape of this smaller square. Then I'll extrude again, drag it out, and I have my object. I now, sorry, it's in face mode. I have that object. Now, it doesn't look exactly like this, and the reason that is because there's no bevels on it. So you're going to use the auto crease function, and it should select all the hard edges. If it selects these ones, that's okay. Just deselect them. But the auto crease tool is really useful. It selects all the hard edges, and you're just going to press Control Bevel. You're going to set your fraction to probably 0.1, and now you have this nicely creased object. This one looks different than this one because this is a smoothed version while this is non-smooth. So if I press, if I have it like this, this is really nice looking. And if I want it to look like that, what I would do is I would go back to the bevel tool, turn off chamfer, and now it looks like it originally did. But if I press 3, I have to drag some things out first. So these triangles, when you press 3, they mess up the. Remind us what chamfer is. Chamfer is instead of having this edge, if I turn chamfer off, or if I leave chamfer on, this middle edge will just be gone. It'll just be these two edges. But if I turn chamfer off, I get to keep the edge that was there before. And that's pretty useful. I usually keep that off just because I prefer to have my edge. For this assignment, we can fake that. So now, see, I do this, and I do this again, and it looks better when I 3-key it, but it still looks kind of funky. And that's because you have this big like quad, but it's more like a triangle. It's like a weirdly shaped triangle. So what I do for this is I just take the multi-cut tool and just make this a triangle, like a complete long triangle. But it still has that weird look. And that's because these triangles are way too long and skinny. You do not want this. If the triangles are this long and this skinny, you're going to get weird edges for your model. So I recommend, if you can, adding in an edge loop. But you see how my edge loops are making weird shapes? That's because of these faces are not connected correctly. So what I'm going to do just quickly to make this work, I'm just going to delete all of those, select these, and extrude in. And I'm going to do this twice. You don't need to, but it makes it so much smoother. And to get these points to snap together, I use this fun tool called Tangent Weld, and it lets you drag and snap to points. So now it's snapped, but I have these extra edges, you see? Another thing I could do to make this work is I can add in these fun little bevels, or side. Does it automatically merge those edges, or is it still separate? Oh, if I use Tangent Weld, it automatically does it. So I'm going to do that here too. Yeah, if you Tangent Weld, it automatically does it. So these two, it's harder to Tangent Weld, so I'm just going to select them. And then I'm just going to merge them. And now I have my 4 verts instead of 8. So it's, to double check if it's working, just press 3 key. And it should work. Welcome, see you. This is still recording, so you can see the rest of it later if you need to. Sorry this is so long. I thought it would be shorter for the first day, but I guess I was wrong. So now what I'm going to do I want to get these verts. Ooh, right. So we're going to click that vert and drag here. So the reason it wouldn't let me draw across is because these faces are not truly connected yet. I have to snap these verts to it. So if I try to draw from this line to here, it won't let me because this extra edge here means that this is not connected, or this extra vertice here. So I just click the center, just going to drag to roughly where it is, and then I can merge them later. And this is what you're going to be doing. You're just recreating the objects I give you. All the objects are pretty simple, and I'm going to send this out today, right after this. Please choose your object you want to model for the class based on how you feel you think you can do and what you're more interested in. If you're more interested in sculpting, I'd pick the mirror or the desk. If you're more interested in hard surface, pick the lantern or one of the two guns. But yeah. So yeah, now I just select all these points. There's 4. Oh, I missed one. And it should just let me merge them all as the objects I want. And it looks like I accidentally grabbed an extra vertice somewhere. So if I press Alt-X, I get to see this glowy view and figure out what I accidentally selected. So I accidentally selected that one. If you're uncertain which would you prefer, I would pick either the desk or the lantern, because at least those two have bits of both in them. So yeah, now I'm just going to merge, and I got this nice shape now. So now it looks like this one. But you see how this is thicker than these outer ones? I don't want that to be. I want them to be roughly the same. So what I'm going to do, did I not? Oh, I might not have done this correctly. That's fine. I'm just going to select all of these. Not you. All of those. And we're going to 3 key it. And we're just going to scale it in until we get the shape that looks roughly like the other ones. And we're gonna, it's not going to be exact just because these objects are different, but if we scale it in enough, we should get something similar. I think I messed up on this one though, because it should look more like this. Yeah, so this is how I did it. Sorry, I messed that part up. I just did it a bit too fast. This is how I would normally do it. You're just trying to connect this edge flow. Since this is flat, you don't have to worry about how the topology looks. Remember, flat planes, you can hide things. Curved edges, like the cylinder, it's very hard to hide like issues. But flat planes, you see how I have most of the topology on this top plane? That's because it's a lot harder to hide stuff on the curved surface. And that's pretty much it. So this is going to be your homework. Don't worry, not all of this is going to be your homework. I'm just going to give you the simple stuff for now. I'll just give you like these, because these aren't that bad. And they're all based off the square. The cylinder ones are a bit harder, but that's okay. Homework is due on Saturday by 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. at night. Or Saturday at night, 12 at night. Homework is due, and next class is Monday at 12. So the classes will be the same time each week. Yes. So yeah, these objects I'll give to all of you. In most cases, you would not ever put a sphere this high poly into a square, but this is just like the base material, so I could show you guys how to do it. In our class, we won't be using 3 key. I just want you guys to understand why 3 key is important. So yeah. So yeah. Any more questions before we finish up and I'll post the recording of the class lecture right after this. Any questions? No thanks.
We can learn how to download.
Yeah, here we go. You want to do that now or next week? Because you're not going to use it till next week.
Oh. Oh.
You can if you just want to mess with it. Just to figure it out.
Just learn it now so that we have it.
Okay. So we're going to go to my folder. So I'll share this with you guys. It's in my San Jose account, so I can just send it over. Is there sufficient info from this lecture if you haven't done it before? Is it what? If you haven't done what before? If you are new to modeling, here. It should have everything you need. I would just search up beginning Maya, and there's someone I follow who's got a good beginning Maya tutorial. Where are my subscriptions? I don't want to see the videos. I want to see who I am following. What is that? Oh, that's not annoying at all. Game Grumps Daily Show. Okay. Why is this so difficult? Whatever. Oh, here they are. There's a guy on here who has a pretty good. Haha! Mr. H. Mr. H on YouTube has a good, like, Maya the basics, and stuff like that. It's pretty useful. It's super beginner though, like super duper beginner. But if you do stuff like that, like just look up YouTube videos on tools if you get confused by the tools, but I pretty much explain how to use every tool you're going to need for the class and how to set it up, so shouldn't have that issue. But yeah, so in this folder, I'll share this with you guys. Oh no, this is my ZBrush presets. Oh yeah, I'll also share my ZBrush presets with you guys so you guys can use my presets because they'll just make your life easier. So to download ZBrush, you're going to need this stuff from this folder. Unzip all the files to the folder. Yes, I read that part. Here we go. So, oh no, this is a plugin. This is the plugin I use for ZBrush. Here is the download stuff for ZBrush. Let me double check that stuff. Basically, what you're going to do is unzip all this stuff. You're going to download this. Download anyway. And just open it up. I thought I put in how to download it. Let me look. It should be in here. ZBrush books? Is that where I put it? No, those are just books on how to... Oh, I can also share those books with you. They're just ZBrush tutorial books. And this is my other book collection. Should have it somewhere. I might have it in the team drive. Everyone close your eyes. This is non-showy spaces. No, it's actually fine. I'm just looking for a file. So yeah, I downloaded it all. Takes a second. Don't need WinZip. Don't know why it's asking me for that. Video game refs. I thought I put it in here, but I guess not. That's fine. We're just gonna go back to my drive because this is team drive. Downloads, ZBrush, blah 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 blah. So now I have my ZBrush, and it says all this stuff: update, license, activation license, update, blah blah blah. So you're gonna have to unzip it. thought I... Oh, so you're going to have to download... If you have a Windows computer, you're going to need something called WinZip. Which I'm pretty sure... Please work. Mine is sometimes finicky. Yeah. I agree to all this. I already installed this. Why is it doing this again? But you're going to use Windows Zip to unzip your file. Why is it not letting me do this? Mine was free. Or free, as I like to call most things I use. But you're going to use WinZip, and you're going to unzip your file. Should just fucking work. Oh, this is so fucking annoying. I'll just use the shitty version, I guess is what they're asking me for. Yeah. So, I'm just going to drag it in. And I want to unzip it. So, unzip to, and it'll just unzip to a folder in your downloads. So, this is how you get the ZBrush. Unzip all files to folder, update license, ZBrush installer, all this fun stuff. I'm gonna have to double check. There's a video that shows you how to download the rest of this stuff. This is just how you unzip and all that, because some computers don't have this feature. So I might have to just show you guys that. But here's the activation license, and it's gonna basically it's gonna fake a activation license and an update. And this is your fake license, your update, and all that fun stuff. Let me quickly find, I have a piece of something or other that tells you how to download it specifically. But there is a YouTube tutorial. So I'll go back to that. For Maya, downloading Maya onto your computer, just go to the Maya website. Autodesk. Make sure it's Autodesk. Sorry. Actually, type in Student Maya, because you want the student version because it's free. And then just click the first link, free software download. Create an account if you don't have one, and then it gives you choose your version, choose your operating system and language, and just download, and then you'll have it all set up for you. Any questions? I'll double check for the download video for ZBrush. I thought I had it in here, but I guess I don't for some reason. But I do have it, I promise. Or I can just show you how to do it if that's the case. It just takes a few seconds. And then these are my hotkeys and ZBrush stuff I'll show you guys. Anything else for the first week?
Sounds good.
Okay. I'm a Marvel man. Oh, Marvel of Man. Oh, that makes more sense than Marvel Man. But yeah, so this is. I'll also share this with you guys. It's just my folder of random art stuff. It has art books and shit and some tutorials. It has a 3D sculpting tutorial by the guy who did God of War. He was the art director for God of War. So if you want to know sculpting in ZBrush, this guy has tutorials on faces and muscles and shit. But yeah, have a good week. I'll post the homework, and I will post the Edgeflow assignment in one of the homeworks. So your homework for this week is just to do the Edgeflow assignment and block out the shapes for your model. They aren't relevant to everyone else, but if I could see on your screen, that would be very helpful. They aren't relevant to everyone else. I have some questions about lights. Lights? What do you mean lights? Like how we use them for Maya? I was following tutorials. And the lights were very dim when I put theirs. Oh, we're not going to use lights till much, much later. So don't worry about lights. Lights are an end of the, once you're done modeling thing. You don't need lights till the end. Is there anything I didn't go over that you guys would have wanted me to go over?
Or did I talk too fast? I don't know. This is my first time doing this, so any critiques would be good.
Well, I think you did a good job.
Thanks, Sienna.
If you go too fast, we can always just look at the video again when you included it, right?
Yeah, it's actually. I should actually. I'm gonna stop the recording.